Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. It's been very quiet in much of the UK recently with high pressure dominating, but almost 34 years ago it was a very different story indeed. The Great Storm of October 1987. I'm old enough to remember it, and quite frankly I don't think there was anything great about it at all. It was awful. The worst conditions affected northern France, southern England, particularly the densely populated home counties. And here are a few statistics from that event. The highest recorded wind speed was 135 miles per hour in northern France. In England it was 122 miles an hour. The central pressure dipped to 953 millibars. What happened was the area of low pressure moved up very quickly and deep and intensely. It moved up from the Bay of Biscay towards southern England, northern France, and it really caused havoc. It led to the deaths of at least 22 people. And in addition, 15 million trees are estimated to have been felled. All in all, it was considered to be a 1 in 200 year event. And just before I move away from the Great Storm of 1987, I suppose this has to at least be mentioned. The famous quote, I'm not going to read it out, it's there for all of you to see. Anyway, coming back to the short term, I'm going to take a look at the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. And at the outset, things are very different, as I've already said, to how they were in 1987. Got high pressure dominating the scene and it's dry across much of the UK. There is a little bit of patchy rain in the north pushing down into central areas at times today, but all in all it's a quiet picture. As we head through the coming days, high pressure continues to remain the dominant feature at least for a time, but through Thursday a change does take place. What we see is colder air, Arctic air, moving down into Scotland. That's behind this weather front here. As it pushes southwards, it really fades away, and the cold incursion's just going to be for a short time across the north of Britain, but it could lead to some nighttime frost. As we head into the weekend, this is where things potentially begin to change. I think we're still looking at high pressure bringing quite a lot of dry weather to southern and central regions. Greater risk of rain there moving across the north. Temperatures probably not too bad generally, but then into the early part of next week, the change really gets going on this sequence. This is based on the GFS model. What we see is during Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the Atlantic comes back with a vengeance. Hopefully you can see it more clearly on this animation because I've actually changed the projection a little bit so the UK's further to the right on the screen and it's easier to see where most of our weather is coming from. So by Wednesday the 20th, low pressure air centred somewhere close to Iceland and a vigorous westerly flow moving in across most of the UK. I would expect the wettest and windiest spells to be in the west and the northwest, drier at times in the southeast. Also some possibility of some higher temperatures there still. Just to have a look at what's driving this transition, well, the jet stream gives a good indication. This chart is for Wednesday, October the 13th. High pressure still really the dominant feature, as I said, with the jet going over its top and down the North Sea there. Not ideally placed, that's why we're getting a little bit of rain, particularly in the north and eastern Britain in the short term. Moving ahead though to the 19th, and a big change. By now it's a low pressure dominated scenario. The jet stream here is sinking quite a long way southwards and then back up towards the UK, indicating the likelihood, as I said, of a more unsettled pattern becoming established. Looking at the upper air temperature profile, initially here Wednesday the 13th of October, still yellows over much of the UK. It's actually a little bit cooler there over the southeast to begin with, but all in all, upper air temperatures close to or above the average over much of the country. Jumping forwards to Tuesday the 19th, The Atlantic is back, and the warmest air then, as I indicated earlier, is likely to be in the southeast, and the coolest upper level air there in the northwest. But not cold, just cooler than it has been. Looking at the 2 metre temperatures therefore, so Wednesday the 13th, respectable for the time of the year, 16s, 17s, maybe 18s across the southern half, a bit cooler again as you head northwards. If you're looking for cold weather at this point, as you can see here, you've really got to head up into Norway to find the blue shading, or Iceland, which indicates temperatures at or below 0 Celsius. But moving forwards a couple of days to Friday the 15th, this is where we've got the Arctic air moving down into the north of the UK. You can see it's cooler now in Scotland, temperatures down into single figures, still not too bad in the south, although a little bit cooler. As I said, that cooler incursion at least leads to a briefly increased risk of nighttime frosts in the north. This is showing forecast minimums on Saturday morning. Saturday the 16th, you can see there, temperatures down to about 0 Celsius, maybe a little bit below in the Scottish Glens. As we head southwards, it's not as cold, but temperatures dipping into single figures in much of the UK. Jumping forwards to Monday the 18th, this is when the Atlantic's coming back. What we see now is the coolest conditions remain there in the north, the northwest of the UK. Higher temperatures in the southeast and central England. All in all, fairly close to the average, I would think at this point, maybe slightly below in the northwest and slightly above in the southeast. One thing I have picked up on in the latest model output updates is the potential for windy conditions. Obviously, as the Atlantic comes back and we've got areas of low pressure tending to dominate at this time of the year, that's not unusual. But the Canadian model is going for a particularly nasty looking area of low pressure on Tuesday the 19th of October. This chart shows mean wind speed forecast from it, so gusts would be significantly higher, of course. So what we can see is mean wind speeds here in parts of the west over 50, 60 miles an hour just off the west coast. Pretty windy also down to the south and there to the northeast, around the coastal counties of Britain in particular. So I think this one needs watching. It's not supported by the other models at the moment, but the Canadian model does verify very well. It tends not to be as widely used, I think, perhaps as the GFS or the European, but it is always worth taking on board. We can see at the moment these are verification statistics which NCEP in the USA produce, and they look at various different models, including the Canadian, the GFS, the European ECM, and the UK Met Office. What we can see here is that at 6 days in the Northern Hemisphere, the Canadian model, the CMC there, is showing a higher verification statistic than the GFS at 0.805, the UK Met Office at 0.808, and it's only trailing the European ECM, which is at 0.839. So the Canadian there, CMC, at 0.815. The closer those numbers are to 1, the more accurate the model is at the given time. So definitely, although the very windy scenario which the Canadian model is showing isn't being supported just at the moment by the other models, I think it's worth keeping a close eye on as things turn more unsettled towards the end of the first week. Rainfall. Well, in the short term, as you can see on the left, days 0 to 5, it's mostly dry across England, Wales and large parts of Northern Ireland. There's a little bit of rain in places, 1 or 2 millimetres as that weakening weather front moves southwards. All in all though, as I say, it's a dry picture. Different across Scotland where rainfall totals are between 10 and 20 millimetres, so more active weather fronts at times crossing eastwards there. But then looking at the chart on the right for days 0 to 10, things are changing. It's much wetter by then in the north and the west. We've got rainfall totals of between 50 and 70 millimetres. Still drier as you head eastwards and particularly southeastwards. Totals in East Anglia there, 10 millimetres, not great at all. Parts of the southeast only 8 millimetres. As I say, that's accumulated over the 10-day period. So even though this transition to more unsettled weather is being shown, it could well be that parts of East Anglia and the southeast don't see a great deal of rain, at least not initially. So how do the deterministic models compare at 1 week ahead? Well, just to recap, here's the GFS, which the animation was based on. The chart is for Tuesday, October the 19th. What we see is the Atlantic is back, predominantly unsettled conditions developing across the UK. Next, the Canadian model. Now, this is the one that's suggesting the risk of very windy conditions. We can see here, this is a nasty looking area of low pressure, the strongest winds just ahead of it. And although it's not really supported, as I said, by the other models just at the moment, it is worth watching. All in all, though, this also presents an unsettled scenario. The German Icon model, low pressure just to the northwest, high pressure down to the southeast. So most unsettled conditions likely to be in the west and the northwest of the UK, drier at times in the southeast, also the likelihood of higher temperatures there. The European model, similar, again high pressure down to the southeast, low pressure to the northwest, a brisk west or southwesterly flow probably across the UK, generally quite unsettled, but once more some drier periods, some higher temperatures there in the southeast, East Anglia. Finally, the UK Met Office, also a consistent picture here, low pressure to the northwest, high pressure to the southeast. Therefore, taking all the deterministics together, the scenario is quite an unsettled one. The wettest conditions likely to be in the west and the northwest, the driest and warmest in the southeast, and windy conditions at times, potentially very, very windy if that Canadian model is on the ball. So, week 2, and just to remind you as ever, this is all about trends and probabilities rather than specifics. Starting with the 16-day GEFS plot for London, across the top, upper air temperatures, and the story here is quite straightforward. The runs are fluctuating around the average through week 2. Some are climbing above it, then they're dipping back down, climbing above it again. That's suggesting an Atlantic-driven pattern is looking likely, with warm sectors and then cooler air taking it in turns to push across the UK. Rain, well, there's an ongoing risk through week 2, a number of spikes there continuing to appear. I'd say all in all, it's not looking awfully wet, but you would expect there to be some rain of significance even in the southeast if this is right. Jumping up to Glasgow, and here there's more of a signal on the upper air temperature profile for cooler temperatures. The thick black line, the 30-year average there, is climbing, is above a lot of the runs. It's above the ensemble mean for much of the second week. So there is the likelihood here, as I say, of it being somewhat cooler relative to that 30-year average. Also, the rainfall profile is different, notably different to the southeastern plots. Far more spikes here, a wetter scenario being shown. So low pressure having more influence in the northwest, cooler upper level air from the west to northwest, crossing this part of the UK more frequently than in the south. We are getting to the time of the year, of course, where people are thinking about the possibility of snow. I know there have been various reports in the media recently. There always are in October. People's focus starts to shift from the warmth of the summer straight onto the likelihood of snow as we head towards the winter months. Well, I don't think there's a great deal of snow risk in most of the UK through the next couple of weeks, but I just brought this chart up for the Cairngorms to illustrate what we can expect over the Scottish mountains. And in particular, to look at the snow row, what we see here is that it reaches 20 there in the short term. So that's as that colder air moves down through the first week. And then through the second week, as the more unsettled conditions develop, the snow row there ranges between 1 and 12 on any given day. The thing to remember for snow row is it has a maximum value of 33. That would be if all of the runs in the GEFS were suggesting snow to fall on that given day. So when it reaches a score of 12, that's the highest, it's suggesting roughly a third, just over a third, so 30 to 40% chance of snow falling, not necessarily accumulating over the Cairngorm Mountains. Very typical, I would suggest, for this time of the year. Nothing out of the ordinary at all at the moment. On the subject of 2 metre temperatures, another factor is currently, a consideration currently is the gas usage and the demand for it across the UK, across Europe as a whole. And to a large extent, that's going to be temperature dependent. Therefore, it's just worth taking a look at this chart, which shows the temperature anomaly. It's actually from the GFS, so it's from a deterministic model at 10 days ahead. And what it's showing is that much of Europe is going to be warmer than average. The reds indicate that a positive anomaly. The blues up in parts of Scandinavia there, negatives, that's where it's colder. Also, if you see just across Scotland there, probably close to the average. I also wanted to show the Ensemble 2 metre temperature anomaly because it's actually very consistent with that GFS run. Surprisingly, because often the operational run can go off and depart from the ensemble mean, but not in this case. Again, what we're seeing on Friday, the 22nd of October, is the below average temperatures there across the north of the UK. So as I showed with the line graph in the northwest there, it dips below, the ensemble mean dips below that 30-year average through much of the second week. Generally, though, it's a positive anomaly across most of Europe, going through right across Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and into Russia. Looks like being warmer than average if the GFS is correct. Presumably, that would lead to a reduced demand for gas and heating generally. So, no sign of it being particularly cold at the moment. In fact, on the contrary, looks like temperatures could well be above the average through much of the next couple of weeks. Coming back to rainfall, looking at the London data table. So each column here shows the output from all of the runs in the GEFS, what they're forecasting in terms of rain. Light grey, completely dry at a given time slot, dark grey, and the other colours here indicating rain. So what we see is that through the second week, there's still quite a lot of light grey in there. A number of runs at the given times forecasting dry conditions. Nonetheless, an ongoing risk of rain, which just reinforces the 16-day line graph, which I showed earlier. It's also worth comparing it to the northwest. Here there's less light grey through the second week, more dark grey, but also more of the other colours which are indicating greater rainfall total. So the wetter picture here being in the northwest being shown quite nicely. The surface level pressure ensemble plot, this one for York, as usual, a relatively central location. Well, it's also showing that week 2 begins with relatively low pressure. We can see the ensemble mean there around 1,000 millibars, well below the average. There is something, though, of an upwards trend as we go through the second week. Perhaps low pressure areas tending to pull away, maybe high pressure to the south starting to have more influence once more. Although towards the very end there are a number of runs which bring in deeper dips and pressure. So areas of low pressure probably there moving in from the Atlantic on some of the runs towards the end of the second week. All in all, a mixed pattern. certainly not high pressure dominated as we've become accustomed to for much of the first half of October. A more changeable and unsettled theme developing. To reinforce that, here's the Ensemble mean. So the mean surface level pressure generated from the Ensemble mean, Friday the 22nd of October using the GEFS. You can see there 1,010 millibars cutting through southern England, and pressure lower as you head northwards, as is typical. Suggestions here at times probably of colder or at least cooler air moving down from the northwest, so polar maritime air at times moving down at least across the northern half of the UK, leading to that possibility of temperatures being somewhat lower relative to the average. In the south there, probably milder if this general profile is correct. And it's very, very similar to what the ECM Ensemble shows at the same time. Once again, we can see the 1,010 millibar line there, cutting through southern England, pressure lower as you head northwards. More indications of a northwesterly or even a northerly element to the pattern. So colder possibly in the north at times, agreeing therefore with the GEFS model. So to summarise the next 2 weeks, week 1 begins dry, particularly in southern and central regions, but at times it will be wetter in the north. A brief colder incursion is expected in the northern half of the UK, and that leads to an increased risk of nighttime frost. But despite that, temperatures will often be close to or slightly above the average. Towards the end of the first week, a transition to more unsettled weather begins to develop, especially in the west. It could also become windy, and there is that chance, according to the Canadian model, of it turning very windy indeed. So keep an eye on the short-range forecasts as we head through this period. Week 2, the theme is for it to be unsettled. That means all parts of the UK can expect wet and windy periods. But the wettest conditions are likely to be in the northwest, the driest in the southeast. Temperatures in the north often slightly below the average, but in the south close to or above it, particularly in the southeast and East Anglia, where it could still be quite warm for the time of the year during some days. So there we have it. It's all changed. We're going to be losing the dry and settled conditions as high pressure gives way to the Atlantic and its associated low pressure systems. So I hope you found this video useful and enjoyed it. If you did, then please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks for watching now. Bye.